Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere, with just an iPad or an iPhone, and no wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ's markerless motion capture in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, analyzing posture and gait mechanics, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit them at kineticiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. You know, I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have Metabolic Elite be one of the sponsors of the Zelos Podcast. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. I've seen a lot of supplements and performance enhancement things over the years, but they pair clinical experience with innovation, like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, and trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. So learn more at metabolicelite.co. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, ZELOS. Hey, thanks for tuning into the Zelos Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. This week, I'm heading to Florida. That's right, the University of Miami basketball. Tommy Otley, he's not only a physical therapist and lead physical therapist for the team, but he's also in charge of sports science. Before we get underway, I'm going to be out of here in just a couple of days. I fly down to New Orleans for the 2026 National Conference, the NSCA. That's going to be July 11th, or the 8th to the 11th, I should say. It's going to start Wednesday and go all the way to Saturday. Got to break away from there and head over to Southern California for the second half of that because the Perform Better Summit's happening in Long Beach, the Long Beach Conference Center, July 9th to the 11th. So trying to be in two places at once. I don't know how well I'm going to do, but if you're happening to go to one or maybe even both those events, hey, let's connect. I would love to network. Or just go to my website, rockysnyder.com, for more information. Follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Click the subscribe button and enjoy the conversation. Tommy, first off, welcome to the Zelos Podcast. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time off during your time off.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to be here. Like you said, get a little bit of time away. My son was born last week, so I'm home for a couple weeks and kind of getting my feet back under me and everything like that. But no, it's been great. So it's good to be here.
You go from one position where you barely get any sleep to now becoming father of two without barely any sleep. I mean, I guess you've been training for this for a while.
Yeah, you're ready for it, right? Exactly. I think that's what sports does for you. It just gets you ready for kids, right? And vice versa.
That's crazy. So, hey, give us a little lowdown on where you came from and how you got to Miami and doing all the stuff that you've been doing with basketball teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a PT sports science guy with University of Miami basketball. I've been here for 4 years now, which has been an awesome position, awesome environment, and awesome group of people to work with. I'm very blessed. I get to work with both men's and women's teams, so a variety of different staffs, different performance professionals, and it's really been a great place to grow and learn over the last few years. Before that, I was at Duke for a couple years. I did their residency program for sports physical therapy, and then I got the awesome opportunity to stay and remediate, jokingly, but got to stick around for their fellowship program, and they weren't ready to let me go yet. But it's a great program. I learned a ton there. Got to work with men's basketball, women's basketball there too, which helped me kind of fall into that as a passion and an environment I could see myself really doing well and fitting well with. So those 2 years really formative for me. I learned a ton from their staffs and continue to have them as mentors for myself today. But they helped me kind of bridge the career path into basketball, and then Miami. That things just came up at the right time, and timing is everything with sports jobs. So they were looking, and I was looking, and I got to connect with several of the people you've had on before, but Julia Rapicavoli
Oh,
and Lewis.
legendary.
And yeah, absolutely. So the two of them connected with them, and it was an easy yes for me to come down when I got the opportunity.
But basketball wasn't your primary sport growing up, or was it?
No, definitely not. I was a swimmer. So I grew up swimming in high school, swam club, swam in college. But I had to take a break from the individual sport route. I think I started a black line for way too long. It was making me go crazy. And watching basketball is a lot more fun than watching swimming, at least in my opinion. I do still love swimming. I still compete sometimes in it and everything. Try to stay active and stuff, um, but basketball is such a cool environment to work with and such a neat, dynamic sport. And yeah, just has opened up a lot of doors for me.
So curious, what's your favorite swim stroke when competing?
I swam individual medley, so I swam
Wow,
everything, a
all
little bit of
around.
everything. But breaststroke and 200 freestyle were my best events.
Right on. Where did you compete?
I swam at Asbury University. It's a little small D3 school up in Wilmore, Kentucky, right outside of the shadow of University of Kentucky.
Right on. And so, just curious, like the crossover or carryover with competitive swimming and basketball, is it a stretch or is there some things that
Things that
really,
stick over.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely things across all athletics that just translate, of mentality.
sure,
I think obviously, I think swimmers have a unique. It takes a unique person to be a swimmer. I think a lot of times swimmers turn out as great staff members because you've got such a unique drive and you want to succeed and you're willing to stick to it even though it's not always fun, it's not always a good thing. Basketball is the same, but I think taking an adaptation to the team environment is something that was fun for me. Your face is in the water half the time when you're training for swimming. Basketball is so unique as our field, any court field sport where everybody gets to talk, there's a huge communication component. So that was a big difference. I think one of the big differences, but I think there's something to say about the aerobic nature of basketball, just like there is to swimming, and the
good call.
conditioning component is different, but it's sometimes similar. And I think we forget about the conditioning component a lot of times in training. And that's something I think sticks across a lot of sports, whether it's individual or team.
Now, was there an injury or episode that you received some type of rehab guidance and that propelled you into thinking about physical therapy? Or was it just the curiosity of the body? Like what inspired you to follow that path?
Yeah, yeah. No, it all started back in high school for me. My brother had some knee injuries, and I was old enough to drive. He wasn't yet, so I was the commute to rehab. That was the first step for me in getting interested in seeing. I was like, hey, I love how people are helping him, and I want to do that. Like, that's awesome.
Dude, that is so smart. Most people get themselves injured and then go through the whole path. You,
No,
my
just watch
friend,
somebody
are
else. Yeah.
freaking brilliant. You pushed your brother off the roof or something and said,
Yeah,
"Okay,
exactly. Yeah, here you go.
yeah,
Let's see how this goes. But then so I made it through up into undergrad and I was still convinced, I want to do something PT, athletic training, one of those kind of pathways. And then when I was a sophomore in college, got in a really bad car wreck. Um, and then I got to be on the rehab receiving side of things then.
ah,
But then, so I skipped it at first, found the path, and then had to pay for it later. But then that process going back from that back into swimming was a good experience for me. I think it's always helpful when you've had your own personal experience in rehab. If you don't want to carry all your own baggage back into things with everybody, but I think it's helpful having some perspective of what it means to get back to something you love, something you want to do, and the time away from that is a challenge and how to manage all that different factors.
I love it. So, on your LinkedIn page, right under your name, it says advancing research, rehabilitation, and performance. How are you doing that? I know that's a
Great,
loaded question, but
great
how are you
question. No,
advancing it?
I think that's something that I have more recently stepped into. I think, I think you reach a point in your career, and I'm not there, but not not saying I've made it by any means. I hope not, because there's lot to go. But I think you reach a point where you're like, I want to start giving back uh as well. And I think that for me was a big part of why I've decided to pursue a PhD too. Um, and so
How
I'm in
far
my
along are you with your PhD program?
through all coursework and everything now. Now I'm doing the research, so working on studies, everything like that. I still have to take my qualifying exam, hopefully this fall. But managing that on top of team sport and working is a lot. So, and the two kids make it a lot easier, right? But
Daunting
I think
task.
in terms of how I'm doing that, I think. Um, the big question that's always stuck out to me in terms of everything that we do as PTs at least is we live on the rehab side all the time, right? Rehab and return to sport. And I think, no, not that we do a perfect job with that. Return to sport rates are not always improving. You still have the same type of data there. But I think a lot of times we wash our hands and knock the dust off once someone has returned to sport and we forget about them. And I think the big piece that, working in team sport for me was like, it's not over when somebody gets back there. That's just another hurdle. It's just like when you started running again, just like when you started getting back on the court again. When you cleared for competition, the game's not over. We got a lot more work to do. So that really stuck out to me. And a big thing that I'm trying to work on is how we look at performance in team sport after injury. So once you come back, how do you impact the game again? Do you impact the game? And are you your former self? And how can we look at that? How can we measure it? And what are some of the barriers that athletes are going to face along the way? So,
I love
um,
that. Honestly, I feel like this is something I would love to dive deeper into because, in my mind, if we can think of percentages, return to sport, I think you're at 60%. I think there's a tremendous amount more that needs to be done in terms of continuous rehabilitation and supplying the body with trust in movements that it is still hesitant to do, even though some of the tests that you can throw at them will say they're ready to return. There's a whole other level that I feel is not being measured enough, and that might be the mental or neurological side of things, and not just um, uh, counter jumps, force plates, whatever you want to do. So,
yep.
talk to me a little bit more about what you mean.
Yeah, so I think there's a good, like you said, those tests are a good first starting point, right? Like, do you after ACL, do you have quad strength? If you don't have quad strength, that's your foundation, right? You've got to have the foundation first. Um, Things down the road are gonna, the train's not gonna move down the tracks well if the wheels aren't greased and everything's moving well. So strength is a big part for me. Do you have that foundational stuff that you're going to test in those kind of basic performance, physical performance tests, functional tests, jump testing with force plates, back before that, or even if you don't have that, people doing hop testing in the clinic. All those things have a little bit of value here or there. And a lot of it assesses your foundation. Do you have what you need what it takes to do your sport? Then I think the next piece of that is, once you've progressed back into sport, what's the ramp looked like for you? Have you ramped into that sport and been exposed to the things that you need to get exposed to do so well? Or is the ramp, been a little shaky or a little too steep or not steep enough, into to challenging you? And then the last piece, I think for me, that's the most important is how is that being done? You can ramp up volume a lot of different ways. But in basketball specifically, it's got to be done through skill development. It's got to be done through finding the things that you're not good at or you were good at and were having problems with. And I think that's a huge part of where you can collaborate with other professionals that are much better for me, coming from a swimming background, collaborate with skill development coaches, collaborate with our assistant coaches that are working guys out to help build that and um, find those pieces that could be holes later on in the recovery process. Um, But as far as assessing it, I think that opens up a whole nother can of worms. And that's where a lot of the research that we're looking at now is, you can't just say, well, do you play the same number of minutes? Because you don't decide that as a player, you don't
Right.
decide if you score the same number of points. And if you're not getting the minutes and you're not getting utilized, you can't use that as a barometer. And so finding creative solutions for that is something that I think is needed and maybe the next generation of what we're looking at in terms of functional, if you want to call it functional testing, but in vivo type live testing, and game data, all that type of stuff too.
So that's primarily quantitative information that you're seeking. What about qualitative? What about
Yep.
subjective? Like, how do you blend those in, and how much value or worth or um, accuracy do you feel that that provides you?
Yeah, I think quantitative is great, but it's limited. It's so contextual, and team sport is so contextual. And I think that's a big piece that we're looking at exploring right now is we're going to tackle some qualitative stuff with athletes' perspectives too. And what does it mean to you? How did you know that you were back? When were you back? All these kind of questions that, when you did it, we know you've done it because you're back and you've played multiple seasons and you feel confident and you've spoken that. How do you um, what is your perspective on that? And so that's stuff that we're excited to look into and hopefully have some publications and stuff coming out in the future soon on that too, where we've got athlete perspectives on what they've been through and their process of recovery.
Okay, you mentioned quad strength in terms of quantitative. What other like top tier elements do you look for when we're talking about transitioning from return to sport to return to performance?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Like I said, foundational stuff, quad strength. We'll look at counter movement, jump force, or
Yeah.
symmetries. You'll look at if we have pre-injury data, which most of the time we hopefully do. We'll look at that. If we don't, we have a lot of bank data from our own teams as well as some published data sets on um, counter movement, jump data, and drop jumps as well. That's all just on the functional side, right? That's on the, are you cleared to play? Do we feel comfortable with you moving the way you're doing, expressing force the way you did before? And then I think the next step in that is looking at movement too. And so movement quality, um,
How do you
we don't
determine
have,
that? Like, what do you use? Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just really
no, no, for
curious
sure.
about. There's so many different like screens, assessments, or just are you using markerless motion capture? What are
So
you
we
doing?
played we played with a little markerless motion capture. I think there's a ton of room for that in the future. And I think we're still figuring out how to best navigate how to incorporate it. I think um, there's the challenge between repeatability and having a closed test, and then the actual application to sport, right? So you can't necessarily have somebody do a change of direction that's planned and it be representative of a change of direction that's not planned, right? I think there's been some really good stuff with the isokinetic group and some of the stuff that they've done with that with hop testing and how it disrupts some biomechanical patterns when you have a planned versus unplanned event. But it's hard for us to say, well, that really represents what they do on the court, right? And then I think some exciting things with, not now, but probably in the future is with all this optical tracking. The NBA started doing. I'm sure it will trickle down to college eventually too. And what, in game movement patterns start to look like too. And I think there's a lot to go off of that. Maybe a cool opportunity to look at that stuff in the future. Um, but for us right now, I think we're limited a little bit in terms of what we can really assess movement quality wise, other than, some of your closed tasks, um, currently at least.
Sure. And so as you're answering that, my squirrel mind is going, well, what about like neurological fatigue? How do you determine there's muscular fatigue, of course, but what about neural fatigue? Is there some way of extrapolating that from the things that you mentioned? Is it not something that you're looking for? Like, how about this? Better yet, what are the outliers that you're paying attention to when it comes to these individual athletes? Are there certain things that you hadn't considered before that now you're looking and going, Yeah, this is a good determinant.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets challenging. I think the
Yeah.
biggest thing for me, honestly, and I like you said, subjective is such an important thing. I think it's huge, right? It's asking them, what do
Right.
you feel like? How do you feel like you move? And then the other piece that's been really not surprising to me, but something that I think is something that we skip over in trying to be extremely objective with everything is the coach's eye. And I think having that in your back pocket when you're working with athletes is just, hey, coach, what do you think about how he's moving? Do you think he moves well? And, we oftentimes as PT, strength and conditioning, feel like we're movement experts, right? Not at the game. And
Yep.
so I think that's a huge point where you can really rely on the rest of the people that are around you, in terms of what things are supposed to look a certain way, what's not supposed to look a certain way. Um, do you feel like he pushes off and closes space in this way well? Do you feel like he does this well? I think those are really important questions to ask, when you're in that late stage process, with someone. And same with the athlete. Do you feel like you're good at this? Again, is there any movements that you feel like you're challenging for you that you are go-to things for you, I think we always think about, or at least I do, trying to train for the worst case scenario, right? But like I think sometimes the things that they do all the time that they're going to utilize a lot, does that even feel right first before we're trying to think about like, you go up, you get bumped, you got to land on one foot, all this weird stuff. What about just driving to the basket? Does that feel like you feel like you can make space the way you used to? All that type of stuff I think is really critical.
What about when it comes to paralysis through analysis? Like there's moments we all have where there's just so much information being bombarded into us that sometimes you just kind of freeze up and go, I'm not sure which way to go. So, and maybe it's just a brief moment in time. What do you do in those times? Because I have a feeling that's happened to you.
Oh yeah, no, I think I've been oftentimes tasked with being the data person for our team, and our performance staff. And so I think it can happen all the time, and it probably should happen all the time because I think it means that you're reflecting, and you're thinking about, hey, there's a lot of data streams, there's a lot of pieces of information, sometimes conflicting, that I'm looking at. What is actually meaningful and what's actually important? And I think taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture is when, what that is challenging you to do. And if you say yes, I think you oftentimes end up with a better result than if you just kind of push on. Um, and so I think for me, situations where I'm getting a little bit like conflicting information, one thing's telling me one thing, one thing's telling me another thing. I think you step back and have a good solid framework for how you look at information and how you handle information, I think is really critical and important. So for me, I just think about foundationally, have we met the things that we need to meet? From there, have we built up the volume and the exposures the way we want to build them? And then finally, have we done it in a way that basketball makes sense or sport makes sense and sport skill makes sense? And where in that chain is there maybe a breakdown? Is it functionally? Is it through a actual force output? Is it something that they're not capable of doing foundationally that's inhibiting them? Or is it further up the chain from like a movement standpoint or even a skill development standpoint? And then probably in there somewhere, like you said before, confidence, neurologic factors, different things I think that are also important too. But I think one of the big things, sorry, this is slightly off topic, but comes to my
Go.
mind is, ACL, RSI, and a lot of that testing where we look at that at the end. We always look at it at the end, right? We finish rehab and it's part of your death
Graduation
day
process.
graduation process. Exactly right. You finish the ACL, you finished return to sport testing, you take the ACL RSI, and we find out how confident you are about returning to sport and if you have any fears. But for me, I think that's the critical piece along the way that we should be considering, right? And maybe we're not giving a questionnaire to somebody every week, but we're talking about it, right? What do you feel good about? What do you not feel good about? And not to cause them this overly fearful process either. And by no means do I mean that, but uh, incorporating their confidence and what are we doing to build that throughout the process. And I think if you are doing that exposing them to sport in a way that builds success on success. I think that works really, really well and takes not to, doesn't always take care of itself, but I think it really um, ends up being less of an issue at the end than if we wait till the end and we go, oh, we didn't do a really good job at that. We should have done something different, right? Um, and so I think that's critical and very representative of what you could do with any piece along the way, right? If you're thinking the last day, are we strong enough? It's too late. Or the last day, do we move well enough? It's already too late. We got to think about that along the way and have these kind of self checks for things along our process. And I think it's just as much of a auditing process for the clinician or the practitioner that it is for the athlete. Um, and is my process working for them? Not necessarily did they do the work that I expected them to do? Are they strong enough, right? It's did I do the job I needed to do to help them get there? It's more of a self auditing than it is just, are they there yet?
Heck yeah. We're just going to take a quick pause from this conversation to acknowledge our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. The Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere with just an iPad or iPhone. No wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. At the forefront of metabolic elite is Jim Lavelle, internationally recognized clinical pharmacist, a chief science officer at Lifetime, and the co-chair for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. He's got over 4 decades of experience and has guided Olympic athletes, professional teams, and leading health institutions. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. Like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, it's trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, ZELOS. No, that's great. God, I'm really digging where this conversation has been going, Tommy, because thinking about the subjectivity from the player, getting a sense of where they feel they are, their confidence level, their trust in that injured site or surgical site, and so on. But looking at how can we compare that to objective, almost like how the nervous system itself, the unconscious portion of movement, is going to be paired up with that, because they could be at opposition with one another. Like if you've got somebody that just, no matter what, they feel like they've got to get back on the court come hell or high water, and most of your athletes D1 are going to be really driven to do that, they may be giving you information that their unconscious brain is not agreeing with. So I'm kind of curious, like if there's ways in which to discern that. And then also on top of that, like you've got to be the most amazing conductor or sous chef when it comes to managing load management. Like how do you dial in just the right dosing, combining that with their practice schedule or their game schedule. So depending upon where this individual is coming back in the year, like there's so many moving parts. I got to say that must jazz you up to be completely dialing up one thing and dialing back and constantly tweaking it based on what you're experiencing in the moment. Is
Yeah,
it?
no, I wish I was the best conductor of that. I think I do a good job at it. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I think that's what makes it fun, right? I think it's a
Right?
a really neat environment. The challenge with it is where you're at in your season. You hit it on the nail on the head, right? It's if you're hitting it when everybody's getting back, it's the easiest time. It's the easiest thing ever, right? It's like, hey,
Heck yeah.
everybody's ramping up. That's what we're doing as a team, anyways. We went from small group skill to team stuff, and now we're going from team stuff into like live play. Like it's easy, right? But if you hit that in the middle of the season, it's hard. And I think that's why, if you look at the objective studies on return to performance, objectively in basketball, it usually takes 2 years for a player to get back to their same production level. That does not mean that it's not just contextual and it's not a lot of other factors that are going into it, but that's what the hard numbers say a lot of times. And so I think a lot of that depends on where you fall in the season rotation for that first season, right? Like, are you hitting that first season and coming back midway through, or you hit coming in right at the beginning of the year with the rest of the team? And I think um, just as much as it is important from the load management side and the exposure side and building that progressively, it helps coaches see where they're at too. And I think if you come in mid-season, you're coming into a rotation that's established. You're coming into an environment that is operating without you for the beginning of the year, and now you've got to come in and find a way to break into that as a player who's been out for an extended period of time. That can be really challenging, and I think um, the best way to navigate that is really involving everyone in the team, and it can't just be the high performance unit out by themselves. It's got to be them and the coaching staff together with the plan for this athlete as they come back. Because if you're coming in and you're like, hey, we say, hey, he's ready. Well, we haven't seen him all year. How can we feel confident that that's going to be a good? I can play him on Saturday afternoon. In a conference game when he's been out all non-conference, right? So I think, building the exposures, I think the most challenging piece of that is building live play in season. It is so hard because the team's already doing it twice a week and they're not doing it the rest of the time. Like maybe here and there, a little scripting here, a little scripting there, especially when you get into conference play. It's really challenging to build live exposures that represent the game for players. And I think there's a really good paper on this in the NBA about how they've had challenges in doing it. I remember who wrote it, but it's really good about how they manage it with their travel schedule. And I think it was very representative of what an athlete faces in a lot of different settings. Theirs is very condensed. We have a little bit more time between games and all this, but it still makes it challenging having somebody when the rest of the team is already getting that exposure twice a week, and we don't want them to have any more live play, but we've got these players that need a little bit more exposure to help bridge that gap. So I think that's
Well,
one
at
of
least the NBA has the G League, so they can
right
filter them into that setting. But
for
you
sure.
guys don't necessarily have a development team, right? You've got maybe a practice squad, but I mean, you don't have that.
No, and it's hard. I think that's where, figuring out the best way to do it probably depends on your own environment and your own team and your own setting. We do a lot of stuff that involves small group stuff or twos, threes, trying to build that with the developmental guys as much as possible. Um, but it's hard. I think it's a challenging thing. I think you're on one hand you're counting the physical exposure. Are we hitting game distances, typical weekly volume, typically weekly intensities? You have your wearable stuff that you're trying to lean on. Um, but I like Josh Hart's quote. He was like, "Analytics are a lamppost for a drunk person. You can lean on them, but they won't get you home." I loved that this year. I thought it was great. But I think it really is true about the process of recovering them back too, right? Not just sport analytics, but high performance analytics. You can do all the right things from a volume. You can be back to weekly volume. You can be back to weekly high intensity, but you didn't get it through sport. When you go play the sport, it's going to be really hard still, and it's going to be um, another hurdle to kind of overcome. And then if you can build it in a way that really makes sense and is very sporty like and is true sport exposure. So I think that's something that we do wrestle with. We'll keep wrestling with how do we do it best every year. Um, and there's times of the season that's easier and times of the season that's harder.
All right. How about this? Not necessarily changing gears, but I'm curious which of the injuries I know you don't want to see any, but what are the ones that make you go, oh boy, here we go? Are there any on the top? Like, are we talking ACL blowout, high ankle sprain, hamstring avulsion, or grade 3 tear? What are the ones that whew, okay, here we go. This is going to
I,
be a good deal of work.
I think it's always, I like working, but I don't like working that much. And so I always tell the athletes that, right? Like me and our athletic trainer for both teams, but Mark Armour, he's with our men's team, and I've had this conversation a couple times where, if we go down and he's yours afterwards, that means he's coming back in a week or two, and I got to be less involved. And we're all both involved in both situations. But if it's just a short one, I'm not sweating, right? I know we're gonna be all right, but if I gotta be involved and this is a long-term case, then I start feeling like, all right, wheels turning. Where are we at in the year? What do we got to do to get this happening? What is it gonna look like? Where is he gonna come back? All that stuff starts spinning in my head. But I think knee stuff is always a little bit of a uh, it's always scary, right? It's scary for the athlete. It's scary for everybody around. Everybody has an idea of what it could be, what it might be. And oftentimes they're right. You hear a pop, you might be right on what it is. But I think the stuff you see all the time is ankle stuff, right? Ankle stuff, hand stuff, facial injury stuff too. But I think the big things that we've had are that I would not have thought that would have been like, oh man, is hands, man, like hand fractures, different tendon things, stuff that you thought, oh, you wouldn't get hung up on for a long time, but will put you out for a little bit. But I think
And
the
that's
fracture.
primarily from ground contact, from catching fingers in the rim. I'm like, what is the most prevalent mechanism for that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it for us has been ball contact and player to player contact, which has been interesting.
Huh.
You'd think it'd been like falling on a wrist, a fooshing, falling on an outstretched hand, but for us, it's been some ball contact, deflected off of a finger, things that you'd think would just be a stub, or getting caught up in like a screen, getting a hand caught, those type of things too. So I think um, it's interesting because that stuff, especially bone stuff, just takes time, and it's got to heal. And so I think the stuff that is going to take a long time, ligament stuff, you still are like, now we got to deal with this one. Um, I'm excited sometimes because I know it's to say I get to do my work. This is what I'm here for. But you hate it because it's like, man, I feel for the kid. This is not what we want to do right now, and it's hard, right? And so. Um, yeah, so yeah, if I'm involved, I know it's like going to be a long one a lot of times, but I think the stuff that's not surprised me, but has been uh, the more challenging stuff to deal with, just from a time standpoint, and you wouldn't expect it, is some of the finger hand stuff.
Okay. So let's just say over the last 10 years, basketball has changed dramatically in the fact that so much more dependence on outside shots, 3-point land, and actually less play underneath the basket unless we're driving, which
Right.
is going to have tremendous amount more blunt force running in rather than just bouncing bodies off of one another under the rim. And well, I guess we'll get to the NIL in a second, but how has that, if you could look back kind of longitudinally, how has the game strategy changed in regards to player injury or incident rate of specific injuries? Have you ever
Yeah.
looked at that?
There's a couple papers on driving and incidents of knee injuries, and it's definitely higher. The more often you drive to the rim, the more likelihood you are to do it, right? But oftentimes it's because you're doing it more often, right? And so I think that's a little self-explanatory. That's definitely the style of basketball we play. If we get down, we drive downhill. I don't know if you watched it all last year, but
Oh yeah.
we're a little rough and tumble, right? And so I think being aware that that is how your style of play goes into your preparation and everything else too. And I think um, that's where strength and conditioning, what kind of bodies are we building for what we're doing and how we want to play matters. Um, Size of guys, all that type of stuff starts to come to play. You don't want to be too heavy where it's not good that you can't move and it be explosive, but you don't want to be too light where you're you're bouncing off instead of knocking somebody else over, right? And so I think that's all things that are important that we consider. But yeah, I think the change in the game and what the injuries look like has maybe changed, but I think um, college is still sometimes not all 3 point land all the time either, right? And so I think it depends on the style and which team's playing. Too. We definitely didn't take as many 3 point shots last year as a lot of teams do, but we found a way to win too without it. So I think it depends on the style of play that your team's doing and if that will shake out. I do think it has a factor on injury risk though.
I'd imagine. Okay, let's bring NIL in here. You're now dealing with players that are worth in real time like many, many digits. Whereas before the NIL, these were potential, they had potential worth, but nothing was confirmed. How has that changed, if at all, how you and the stakeholders behave?
Yeah, I think it's changed in a couple ways. I think the first way is we are now risk management when we are signing players, right? And I think
There we go.
it's not necessarily 100%. You can't predict the future. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did. But I think you're considering injury history a little bit more heavily than maybe in the past. I'm not saying that it's perfect or we have a special way to do it, but I think it really matters. And if they are dealing with something and there's still somebody we want, that heightened value of what we need to get them to be able to do quickly matters right away. And so I think the screening process of where they're at, what they need to do is just turned up a little bit and dialed up, as well as are there people that we may not want to take just because of what they might be from a liability standpoint. I don't think that's most of the time the case by any means. I think you've got a guy who's played all last year, probably going to be all right. But I think you're still at the same point, figuring out what do we need to do early on to help maybe address any of the concerns that we might have from something that's been a lingering problem so it doesn't rear its head and cause an availability issue throughout the year. Um,
Does that elevate your stress level? I'm just curious, like if it's changed or you're just still cool as a cucumber. I'm going to work with what's in front of me, regardless of perceived value of players. I'm still going to just focus on what I see, or is it like, oh man, there's a hell of a lot more pressure now? Do you feel that at all?
I think our team has done a good job of that. I don't think I've felt it a ton. I don't think our staff feels it a whole lot. I think you obviously feel a little bit because it's changed. The game has changed a little bit, right? I think the players feel it. I think there's a little bit there too, right? Like, um, a- and I also think that the biggest challenge for us in the performance staff side of things is turnover. I think that's the rate of which athletes are coming and going is probably something I think we feel, or at least I feel more so than the stress or pressure of that necessarily certain person, but more so the change in this person is not somebody I've had for 2 years and know how they work or have built a solid relationship with. I've got to pressure cook this in the summer so we have good trust. We have, and so I think the building of trust and building of relationships with players is pressure cooked now, right? You've got to do it earlier. You got to do it faster. Um,
So how do you do that? How do you pressure cook trust within an athlete?
yeah, I don't think you can. I think you can't necessarily win them over in the first 2 minutes, right? But trust is not something that's formed lightly, or and it can be get broken very quickly, right? And so you have all these other external outside pressures. I think it takes a lot of consistency across the team. And so everybody on the same page. You can't have the right hand saying one thing and the left hand saying the other thing. You've got to have a lot of unity across the department. And I think that's something we do a very good job with. And then the other piece is like you've got to be intentional. Like you've got to build the relationships with players right away. You've got to be intentional about talking with them. It can't be this like the training room is this space where guys are we get a little treatment here, a little something there. No, it's got to be intentional. You start to get to know players, and sometimes it's going to happen more than others with different players. But I think it's really critical because you don't have 4 years with the guy very often now, and so I think
Right.
it's important to do it, and you know that's the reason why I love college. I think it's an environment where you get to pour into people, you get to be a part of their life at a very exciting time when they're about to hopefully make a really big jump. And so I think it's something that you want to do that and be there for them. And now it's just a little bit shorter time, but it doesn't change, what it is. I think it just changes kind of the time frame you get to do it in. And hopefully one day that'll be changed. We'll have people for multiple years, and then maybe there's going to be some contracts where we get guys for a little bit of more time. And because I think it's good for the program too. You have that continuity, which for us this year we have with a lot of our core returning. I think it makes a huge cultural difference within the team if you have people that already get it, already know how we do things, already know how, um, you know, what is the our mantra of who we are, and it sticks around. I think it makes a huge difference.
Huge. Wow. Great. Okay. We've got a few minutes to go. How about doing a little bit of rapid fire sessions with me?
Let's do it.
Okay. Some things you just choose this or that and so on. Here we go. Return to sport or return to performance?
Return to performance.
Force plates or GPS?
Force plates.
Data or clinical intuition?
Uh, Data.
Ooh, cool. How about one metric you never ignore?
One metric I never ignore. Uh, it's not a clear one, but asking somebody how they're doing.
I was hoping you'd say that. Right on. Most overrated performance test?
Mm. Oh, that's a tough one. Probably counter movement jump. It's great, but it's also a lot. It's overused.
Oh man, you're just making me smile. That's so good. Strength or movement quality?
Mm. Oh, that's tough. I'm a isolate to integrate type of personality, so I
Ooh.
think you got to have strength first. It's important for me.
Okay. Hey, what's harder to restore, physical capacity or athlete confidence?
Mm. It depends on the person, but I think oftentimes athlete confidence is hard.
One skill every young sports PT should develop.
Uh, I think the ability to see past uh, what your job is and what you're trying to do and see the person.
Nice. Yeah, this is reminding me of John Riley and Will Ferrell in Step Brothers. We should say these at the exact same time on the count of three, but we won't do
Yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah.
How about one mistake clinicians make when clearing athletes to compete?
um, One mistake when they're clearing to compete. I think just looking at the data. I think if you're just checking off boxes, it's not going to get you there.
Beautiful. And last one word that defines elite rehabilitation.
Elite rehabilitation. Can it be a couple words?
Sure.
I think athlete centered. Sorry.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, hey, this, first of all, this conversation has been electric. I've loved everything you've been throwing back at me, and I really appreciate it. You, though, we're gonna be in different places next week when this podcast airs. I'll be in New Orleans at the NSC National Conference, but are you in Vegas?
I'll be in Vegas. Yeah, I'll be at the
What
Elite
are you doing there?
Basketball. Yeah, I'll be at the Elite Basketball Rehab Conference. I'm helping chair this year, so we've got a great lineup of people that are going to be out there. We were chatting a little bit beforehand, but with Dimitri coming out and some other really good people, I think it's going to be a really neat set. It's always a cool setting. This is my second year. I got the opportunity to speak last year, and then got to help put together the lineup this year. But it's nice, it's small, which I think is always a cool feel for conference. And there's a lot of good roundtable type discussion between the speakers. And I think it really lends itself to good conversations as opposed to you just getting yapped at all the time too. So I think that's a nice environment to really dig in on basketball performance in rehab.
Right on. This is going to be, I'm imagining, but correct me if I'm wrong, at UNLV and paired up with the Summer League of the NBA, or no?
It'll be going on concurrent with all that. So there's a ton of stuff going on in it. Yes, it will be at UNLV too.
Right on.
Bunch of
Oh,
stuff where
man.
you pop in for there, pop over for a summer league game, try to
Dude,
make it to the strength and conditioning stuff for NBA. It's so much going on.
that's
That week
great.
is crazy, and I think there's even some other stuff on the tail end of it now. It just kind of keeps getting everybody knows everybody's there, so I think they just let's keep building and having more fun and more stuff going on. So
So good. Yeah, when the national conference for the NSCA was in Vegas, what, maybe 2 years ago, I guess? Something like 2 or 3 years ago, I was able to sneak over to UNLV, get in the door, watch a game or two, and then
yeah.
just didn't get into your lectures or anything, but maybe
No, but
somewhere down the
I tried
road.
to do the same thing. We had a couple guys playing, and I was like, all right, I've got like a little, I can watch like half a game here. And so pop over, see a couple guys that taking the next step and go watch them play a little bit too. So
So
I'll try to
good.
do the same this year again if I can.
Well, how do people find out for those listening that can still like jump in at the last second? How do they find out about the event?
Yeah, just look up Elite Basketball Rehab Conference. I believe it's elitebasketballrehabconference.com. So if they want to check that out, that's there's still I think there's still stuff to be had there. But yeah, it's coming up soon.
And then aside from LinkedIn, which I'll put in the description below, how can people kind of follow you and what you've been doing at University of Miami?
Yeah, well, recently I've started my own little blog stuff going now. So research and resources to come there. So TommyOtley.com, they can find me there. As well as on Instagram, it's Tommy_Otley_DPT. But I'm trying to put more stuff out there about what we're doing and things there too. So it caught me at a good time. I'm getting all that stuff going. Not a lot on there yet, but hopefully more and more every week.
Heck, man. And with a baby just born last week, yeah, I guess this is what you do because you don't sleep. This is all the stuff that you're putting out there.
Yeah, on the
Fantastic.
first one, I just played Legend of Zelda, had the baby here, and this time I was like, I should be a little more productive this year. This time around, last one was just for gaming and hanging out. This one, I'm going to be a little bit more locked in. So, yeah,
Right on. Well, I can't wait to read your stuff and follow your
yeah,
blog.
for sure,
Tommy, I can't thank you enough, man. Thanks for coming on.
absolutely. Thank you.
Now that's what I call a podcast. I cannot thank Tommy enough for coming on. Man, that was such good insight. Love chatting with him. Always good making a new friend and colleague. Until next week, don't forget we've got the NSCA National Conference happening this coming week, Wednesday to Saturday in New Orleans. And then we've got the Perform Better Summit in Long Beach happening as well. Check out my website and let's hear from those great sponsors just one more time. Hope to see you at the conference. Remember to check out metabolicelite.co. Check out all the products they have on their website. Synapsin Pro is something I've been using to help stay focused without having to over-caffeinate myself. It keeps me in the zone so I can just really hone in on the things I need to achieve without feeling like, man, I gotta reach for an energy drink every 5 minutes. Metabolicelite.co. And don't forget, Kinetic IQ. They've got markerless motion capture for morons like me. I can use their product with my iPhone or my iPad. I can look at posture analysis, movement analysis of any exercise, gait analysis. It gives me everything I could possibly want when tracking people's movements. So, check out kinetikiq.com.